Hi there. My name is Brianna Salyer. I'm a fellow student in this English British literature class that we're taking. This is my metaphysical poetry assignment, and I'm going to try to not screw it up. I'm not really good at talking to myself in front of a camera. I don't know who is, but let's get started. I found out from this assignment that I just love metaphysical poetry. I honestly can't say that I knew anything about it before this assignment. So if you can love something before you really know what it is, then that's my feelings for metaphysical poetry. Reading pieces from the great authors that we've researched this past couple weeks, John Donne, Amelia Lanier, Andrew Marvell, and Robert Herrick, just provided a title in which to give my love of this very specific genre of poetry. A lot of people don't even consider it a genre at all. It's kind of, I guess you could say almost a subgenre maybe. When I read metaphysical poetry, I can literally hear the smart aleck smarm coming from the poem, from the author to the reader. The pun, the sarcasm, the wit is amazingly hilarious to me. As somebody that never really, can't say that I'm a super big lover of poetry. The symbolism just gets me every time, and I think I get more frustrated than anything. I'm a super big reader. Me and poetry don't click. I will say, just for the sake of saying it, and I noticed all my classmates also pointed this out, metaphysical poetry is at its root after physical. Meta being the after part at its core naturally. It's kind of confusing, right? So I know, but I kind of managed to break it down two different ways. One way talking about death and the soul and existence outside of our own. On the second, I like better option would be what would the world look like from an outsider's perspective, from after the physical. If we change that one word after, if we change that meaning to something closer to outside of, words are funny in that way. They can have so many different contextual meanings when, being dragged through translation. Anybody that's studied the Bible knows that it's kind of the saying lost in translation. There's so many different words for so many different languages. So if we were to change the word to outside physical, I kind of really like that explanation a lot more than anything else that I've read. The Poetry Foundation, poetry.org, describes metaphysical poetry as poems whose works are marked by philosophical exploration, colloquial diction, ingenious conceits, irony, and flexible lines. Topics of interest often include love, religion, morality, which metaphysical poets consider through unusual comparisons, frequently employing unexpected similes, metaphors, and display of wit, which is where it comes into the smart aleck smarm that I was talking about earlier. I just really, I love puns in and of themselves. I know that a lot of people think that it's the lower class of humor, but I actually think it's quite funny upper class humor. I just get a giggle every time, and why would you uphold such pomp and circumstance when something can make you smile? I digress. The author that I decided to go with is Robert Herrick, and I think like many people during this era, Herrick didn't desire the life of a poet. Poetry seemed to have been some sort of a side job. Maybe he worked on it while he was doing other things. His father was a a goldsmith, and so he apprenticed as a goldsmith, like his father. He went to Cambridge and actually received a BA and an MA, so he obviously had the smarts. And he was, funnily enough, he was not a very lucky guy. He kind of found himself on the opposite end of luck. I guess he served as a chaplain, and he joined Buckingham's military expedition to rescue the French Protestants at Ray, and that failed. The expedition failed, and he failed along with it. He was also then expelled as a royalist until the Restoration. So he wasn't exactly a super out there, always on the right side kind of guy. But his future definitely changed in 1648 when he released his single volume book with over 400 poems in it. I wonder if I can get my hand on one of those, because that would be really cool. It didn't say, I couldn't find out if it was a book that was fully available or if it was only available in pieces. Our Norton's anthology, of course, does not include it in its whole entirety. Much like his colleagues, Herrick used to he used love and life in his poetry. He was definitely one of those authors that we hear about, metaphysical poetry, that used carpe diem, that upon further research, upon further study by some of our scholars today, they did not actually appear to be about those things at all. Love, life, and it was nothing so obvious as in his piece, Upon the Loss of His Mistresses, where the woman could not seem less real. He uses names that are from popular love poetry. There's nothing saying that he had these mistresses, so it was all completely a farce. It was all just him trying to prove a different point in the matter. The humor in Herrick's pieces are what particularly drew me to him over the other authors that we had to choose from. Originally, I was going to go with the only woman in the group. I just absolutely love the history behind women in this era. Women authors, women poets, even women scholars. I just think that it's really cool to see the struggles that women themselves have to go through to be the same as men, without any struggle at all. But anyways, I did go with Herrick because of the humor. I read some of his pieces and I was just dying of laughter from his extremely risque piece, The Vine. Just could not bring myself to actually go in depth with that one. I'm blushing just thinking about it. To Upon Prue, His Maid, which was really weird and psychotic because his maid, Prudence, did not die until 4 years after he died, and the piece is very much hinting at her death. So just some of his pieces are just mind-boggling, hilarious, and makes you think deeper than first glance, but then at the same time you can still look at it at first glance and take so much away from it. So I went with the poem To the Virgins, To Make Much of Time. And I decided to go with this piece just because it's more of a carpe diem voice than anything else. We could obviously look into it. A lot of his pieces had a lot to do with the war that was going on right then. They definitely had parallels with the war, even though it might have not spoken directly of action and fighting. But let's get into it. So the first stanza is, gather ye rosebuds while ye may. Old time is still a-flying, and this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. Rosebuds here is definitely symbolism for their virginity. For sexual activity, Herrick here is basically wrapping up his whole sentiment in the first stanza. You won't be beautiful, untouched flower forever. You got to use what you got while you got it. The second stanza, the glorious lamp of heaven, the sun, the higher he's getting, the sooner will his race be run, and near his to setting. Near he's to setting, excuse me. Here, I think the sun being compared to heavenly light is where these girls must see themselves, and everyone else sees them as such. You know, they're held up on a higher pedestal, but he's basically creating this ominous prediction for them that the higher they hold themselves on this pedestal of virginity, the quicker someone will take it from them, and then it's gone forever. The third stanza, that age is best which is the first, when youth and blood is warmer, but being spent the worst and worst, times still succeed the former. This is interesting because in the second stanza we have three prominent words that stand out: higher, sooner, nearer. But in this stanza we are left without a matching set. That is to say, we can pick out easily best and worst, or worse if you like, while the more obvious last is left up to the reader's own interpretation. It's kind of one of those things that the author left to its readers to read between the lines. The last stanza: then be not coy, but use your time, and while ye may go marry, for having lost but once your prime, you may forever tarry. Here in the last stanza, Herrick, is really driving home the idea that it is best to realize for these virgins that once their time is past, their definition is gone. The thing that they hold themselves to is absolutely just not there anymore. The first two lines in the stanza is essentially saying, enjoy the time that you have, but do not make it all you are. There will be more in the future unless you tell yourself that all you have is your virginity. I chose this particular poem once again because it really hits that carpe diem rule metaphysical poetry uses. Use what you have while you have it is basically what he's getting at, and I really liked that about the piece. So that's what I have. If you listened all the way through, I'm so sorry. I'm not the best public speaker, but I hope you enjoyed my analysis about this author. Thanks. Bye.